So here's the question, right? We're seeing all this polling, and as I said before, I think you joined us this evening, that Bomber said last week, oh, National's always 5 points bigger and Labor's always 5 points lower. And I thought, really? That fills one with hope. Should we really have a look at that? So, we did. So let's have a look. And I've got 4 election cycles for you. What I've done, Chewy, just so you know, is I've taken One News Hub, Roy Morgan. That's it. I mean, I couldn't do it. And I realised after I'd done the second one, I hadn't done the Māori Party, and I wasn't going to go back and redo them. But then again, the Māori Party aren't really about party vote. They're more about electoral seats. So I think it's okay. So this is, if you have a look at the data, these are the last 5 polls, right? See, there's 5, all of them, the last 5 polls from One News, the last 5 polls from News Hub, the last 5 polls from Roy Morgan. Then there's an average at the bottom here of all these polls, and then it's the election day result, and then it's the difference. If it's in red, that means they were polling higher than they got on election day. So red is bad, right? They were polling higher. So for 2021 News, the last 5 polls for National had them sitting on 31.8%. They ended up getting 25.6%. So the polls made them look like they were going to be more a bigger party than the result. So think about that if you see red, all right? With me so far? As you can see, for Labour underpolled. The last 5 polls on One News had them at 48.2. They ended up getting 50.0. So they underpolled by 1.8%. Greens underpolled by 1.5. ACT, ironically, was spot on. And New Zealand First underpolled by 0.4, but still didn't get there because they only got 2.6. That's News Hub. Same again, if you're looking now at, that was One News. News Hub, in the last election, and I'm not going to be as detailed on all of these, just to show you what was going on. News Hub in 2020, they actually had Labour overpolling. So they said they were going to get more than what they get up by 1.2%. They had the Greens again underpolling by 2%. They said they were going to get 5.9. They got 7.9. This is on the average of the last 5. And they had again National getting massively more than they did. They were out by 6.3%. ACT was underpolled by 3.5%, and New Zealand First was about spot on. Roy Morgan had basically the 3 biggest parties all overpolling by 2, 1.1, 1.8. They had ACT underpolling. In other words, they were polling less than what they got on election day. And again, New Zealand First out. So down here in this corner, you can see the average polls. Labour on average were overpolled. So they on average, the polls said they were going to do better than they did. The Greens on average were underpolling by nearly a whole percentage point. So the left bloc were doing actually better on election day than the poll said they were going to do. That's a better way to look at it. Whereas if you have a look at the right bloc, National, ACT and New Zealand First, the poll said they were doing about 3% better than they did on election day. You with me?
Okay.
So when Bomber said that, National overpolls by 5%, for 2020 he was pretty spot on. 6.2, 6.1, 1.8. You don't see, but mind you, this is not the poll of polls. This is just those 3 that I've actually picked. Let's go to 2017. 2017, you can see actually,
God,
again.
You have put in the work, haven't you?
I know. I geeked out. Again, you can see that red is bad, right? That means they were overpolling. So actually, Labour has some red for One News. So the poll said they'd do better. And then for News Hub and for Roy Morgan, they said the polls didn't do them any justice. The Greens were spot on for one, for News Hub, and for some reason, Roy Morgan had them over by about 5 percentage points, which was massive. Damn. And then it seems this one for National for 2017, the polls, they did better on election day than the poll said. And then the other 2 were pretty close. So there's not a trend, because in the first one, right, it shows that National were polling much higher than they got, but one election before that, National was about right. No real trend there. Go back to 2014, and if you have a look, again, National's pretty spot on. The poll was up by 0.8, was down by 1, and was 0.3, about spot on. So they're about spot on, and Labour was getting a better result in the polls than they ended up getting by about a percentage point. So I was struggling to find any trends at all, to be really frank with you. 2011, same again. The polls said Labor would do better for One News and News Hub by a smidge, less than a percentage point. But again, here for National, the poll said they'd do better by 6%, 5%, 5%. So if there was a trend, it might be that National often overpolls. That you could say that because 2 out of the 4, they overpoll by over 5%. And the other thing is all the rest, there's pretty much nothing else to see here when it comes to polling. Some are over, some are under, but there's none of these big 5% out like there is for National. So maybe the trend is if someone's going to be out by a big percentage, it's going to be National, but it doesn't mean they are going to be out. The other thing that's kind of a trend to look at this, and I think this is fascinating. Have a look at this. Election day for ACT 1.1. This is 2011. Election day for ACT 0.6. Election day for ACT 0.4. 2020 election day for ACT 7.6. And the latest poll has them. Oh, what did I do with it? Oh, I took it off. Sorry. Has them up on 11 or 12 percentage points. So the other trend might be ACT has grown exponentially in the last 4 elections. That would be a fair thing to draw from it as well. Now, this has happened before once on the other side. When people were unhappy with Labor, a bunch of people flocked to the Greens for an election cycle, maybe 2. Mm-hmm. And you've seen ACT go from basically nothing to 7 to, let's say, 12 to 15 now because they're unhappy with National. Should they then turn that around, like if National does something to draw their people back, you may see them dropping back down to that 4, 5, 6 percentage marks like has happened with the Greens. Yeah. So Chewy, I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but there isn't that much to talk about when it comes to trends. There's no magic bullet with those three those three poll providers saying, oh yeah, National's going to be 5% over. It's not the case. If they have been out by 5% 2 of the past 4 elections, but the other 2 they were pretty much spot on. So you can't therefore say they'll be up this time around. It might be a spot on one. We don't know, and that's what the last 4 election polls have showed us.
You can never know. Like, yeah, I mean, we talked about this so much with polls, so it's interesting to make this comparison, but so much of the news cycle is polls. Like, it generates clicks, it generates content, it generates stuff for people like us to talk about, that sort of thing. Yep. My whole fear with polls is people take them as gospel. They take it as a foregone conclusion. That's what the election result's going to be. Therefore, I don't have to vote. It's already been decided either in my favor or not. Either way, just vote. Just do the vote. Just go into the thing. It's in malls now. Just tick a box. Go. It takes 5 minutes. Just do it, please.
I think when we played that thing, we played that thing last time from Newstalk ZB, where one of their commentators was saying, with New Zealand First polling over 5%. It'll get them more votes because all of a sudden there's a group of people that can go, oh, my vote won't be wasted. So polling can do that. And I think it can do the opposite. If people are looking and saying, oh, look, Labor's only on 29 and even with the Greens, they're only going to make it to 40. There's no point. It can do the opposite. It can also stop people from voting as well. Yes. And like you just said, Chewy, people just need to vote. And someone once said, if the left vote, the left will win.